Okay, we are back to the bow backing business here. I have some previously made hickory longbows that I haven't had time to skin yet. And these are like light bows. They're like 35 or 40 pound bows, but that's even not the point here. The point is we're just going to go over how I'm going to address putting these skins on. And so that we're basically, what you want to do when you do this is you want to be completely enabled. Enable yourself for every step and be fully aware of things that can happen along the way when what you're dealing with. I've already done here the pre-surfacing. This is pretty necessary when you're dealing with skin. Thicker hide is not as bad. It's more has more thickness because it's been tanned. But just your dried skin, which is being used for bow wrap, it needs a base. So what I do is and I have a video on the site about this already where I cover applying some like old used bed linen. It's clean, but I mean it's old bed linen, or you can buy new bed linen, whatever you want to do. It's not even expensive. It was available, and we weren't using it, so obviously we're not using it. So it's on here now, and what I did with that is I took Titebond glue, adhesed it on there, cleaned it up, and when the process you're going to see me clean off the excess of the hide is similar to how I clean this up here. But this surface here needs to be very smooth. Beneath this surface here was a lot of dimples, where if you put this thin skin on, it's going to crinkle and crack. Even with a lot of glue, it's going to it's not strong enough against itself to be, it'll just start bursting away. And I've seen this many times do that. And now if you have a really smooth surface and adhesive it on there, but still it's still best to give this stuff kind of a bed. It works well. I've never had a bow yet fail that did that. There aren't any examples on hand, but anyhow, being prepared for every step and thinking it through will ensure your success in this, because it can really screw stuff up this way quickly. And since Diamondback Rattlesnake hide, and this is or skin is not, they don't give it away. This hide right here, this piece was around 40 some bucks, including shipping. Just this one chunk. This is going to cover one limb. Sometimes they're more. Sometimes they're a lot more, depending upon who you're getting them from. But fortunately, I'm blessed with a very good provider, and he's excellent and provides the best skins I've ever used. I've run into some pretty bad deals. I won't use those guys again, but anyhow, that's not the point either. So basically, I've enabled myself with what do I need? Titebond 3, which was used to adhesive this bed linen on. And this is going to be the adhesive of choice of this. Got my scissors handy. I got a glass of water handy. I got a brush for brushing the glue. Just little things, towels. Just be prepared for all the things that can become can obstruct your progress. So just create enablers and think of the entire process, start to finish. I'm going to briefly discuss it here. As I've done here, this piece I've already done in advance. This is cut right to the end of where there's a recess in the handle where the handle fits. There's a circular semicircle before it goes onto the riser. I've got this fitted to just past that little extra to the end of the knock, because I'm going to paint and lacquer and epoxy the knocks. I don't like the skin up on the knocks. It just shreds off, and it's just nasty. It doesn't look good. So this has been prepared for this, and there's another step I'm going to do with this. The first thing I do is, and I do one at a time here, is I will completely paint this thin with glue and this with glue so they mate. And they squeeze out. Also, I've kept the masking on, so I don't have to deal with that. I've made mistakes in the past, and it was a nightmare. I forgot to didn't put masking on. And the glue dribble down was not fun. And then you start attacking the physical attributes of your bow. So what I do is I make sure I mask it so the glue dribble down. So when I peel it off, there's no glue dribble down on there at all. There's nothing to deal with that. Sometimes I had to mask it twice, but it was worth it. You can deform your bow by having to rasp off that junk and send it. It's just not what you want to do. So consider this as a finished piece. You have to treat it like a finished piece, and you don't want to remove any extra material, maybe some slight stuff here and there. I mean, you don't want to do that at all. You want to keep your bow what you tailored it out to be in its qualities. So this is one with the rattles on it. This is actually a thin piece of tanned hide, but it's very light. I'm going to go ahead and attach it to here. For one thing, it matches this one real well, the pattern on it. And this is okay. It's you get some real thick stuff. The bow can be kind of spongy, but really, believe it or not, there's still some mild dimples in here. That's not bad. Anyhow, this is so light and so thin that I've done this before. It doesn't even affect the limb. It's not strong enough to do that. The real purpose of snake hide is ornamentation, and it also prevents the little backs, the fibers. The first step to here was by creating a skin on top of here with this linen, and it already have a base. So the fibers of the wood, when it becomes maybe under too much stress, it's not so bad with direct growth rings. You definitely want it with lumberyard wood. Lumberyard wood, as the growth rings have been violated, and it does need a backing. And I've done a lot of successful bows with those, but they don't last very long. They usually tend to break, and it's so long nightmare story there. But this is a natural stave, has natural backing on it, has the dimples from that and whatever else. Not all hickory does that, but this is that really old growth shagbark hickory, and it has these deep corrugations in it that strikes. Actually, it looks pretty cool, but it's not so good when you try to put your skin on, because it leaves these dimples, and then it kind of mashes it in. You can just imagine the effects of it. So I'm going to do with this thing here is what I did over here is I will, I don't know if you can see that or not. Can you see me from there? Stand down here. I'm going to go right to the end of my knock here. Now, rawhide and stuff like that, you have to stretch it. This stuff I've never had to stretch. You don't even have to stretch that skin. You kind of stretch it when you move it on. Yes, you do, but then you kind of pull it down. But it's not something you have to do like with rawhide. Rawhide, you really got to get it soaked and stretched. And this, you don't really have to do that with it. It's a little different than that. It has a different kind of weight to it, different kind of effect. And I am doing what I did on the other one, going right to the back of the knock here. A little excess is fine. And of course, I collect my little rattles. The actual rattle there, pretty cool. All right. Gotta love working with authentic stuff. But see, this is pretty wide. Now it's still gonna look good when it lays down on it. But what I do with this is because I have this bow up and stabilized. Well, yes, I could say I can do this, but it's not very effective. So what I found to do is to keep this from because people would ask me, why don't you just wrap the whole bow? That sounds nice, but I've done this before several times. When I wrap the whole bow, when the bow bends a lot, all this snake hide does is it tears. It crinkles away, and it just looks like crap in no time. And it gets bumped into. It's not stable. It does its job. Or what I do is I put a nice streamlined borderline edge on it. The back of the bow is covered. It makes a beautiful piece of work. So to prevent this from being a hassle like that, I look at the width here and get an idea, and I trim some of it off. I'll just take my scissors and get rid of some of this extra here. Because believe me, look at this. You got plenty there. All right. And believe me, the temptation of wrapping the whole limb is great, but it's not what you think when it comes to this. It's a different story. Only way it works is if you keep it loose, wrap it around, and you take lace and you stitch it back and forth. This is not quite the right kind of plan for that. I want to just back this bow up to the borderline, and I want to streamline it around, and then it looks great from there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut off this excess. I'm going to go right down along this lighter colored where would be the belly of the snake would have been. I'm going to do this now so that it's settled and out of the way. There'll be a little bit left over. It's a shame, I know, when you look at this, check it here. Yeah, that's just right, actually. Yeah, right on the edge, that's straight down. You don't need a lot right there. You just, I have an arrow rest here anyway. I gotta calculate that. Getting that into there. And keeping it centered as much as possible. That's the other trick, is keeping the thing centered. So you don't, you know, if you have a lot of extra on there, it's gonna flap and it wants to lift, and it's a fight for the glue to settle properly. And there's a lot of times you have conflict with how the glue you know, properly set up because it had tension and peel back on it, whereas this reduces that a lot. There are many different ways I try to do this, but so far this has been the most consistent and reliable method. And something that I do with this snake hide like this, this snake skin, is I keep a lot of these around, because snake is extremely in its form without being fused to something. Like when you're down here doing stuff, I've actually had it peel up and rip right off of there, and that's a real bummer. It looks awful. So what I do with that is if I have a section of the hide, I can actually blend it in with a little bit of glue, and I can fuse it on so it looks okay. So now this is in a workable status. It's not too much. See how it lays right there on the edge? It's just right. We're going to be scraping that off all the way down, and it's exactly about where it needs to be. Okay, so I'll press that down. Okay, and I'll go ahead and do it from this side. Like I said, I do one at a time, but I'm going to go ahead and prepare this one now too. Have it ready. So what I'm going to do is in the next video, we'll go into the actual application of the physical steps, putting this on here, what to look for, and then yeah, that's just the next process is or the next video. We'll talk to you guys a little bit. Okay, moving on with the application of the snake hide onto these backings here. What I typically do is go along the back of this and really make sure there's no beans in it, like, you know, no little balls of something. Just like any kind of laminate you do, you're going to want to make really sure that it's pristine underneath there. And so far it feels pretty good. It's kind of do the logical, brush your hand across it. Okay, everything here looks good. This has a little bean, I got rid of it. So this one's just as important. You have to take a look at the conditions of it before you put it on there. And it can easily happen because of stuff just floating around the shop or wherever you're at. Okay. You don't have to put a massive coat on this. Just get the majority of it covered evenly. And I like these art paint brushes. They're sort of a medium bristle. They're not too hard, not too soft, and they helps if you just stroke one way. Just get this spread on there. Try to get the majority of it covered, and there's a reason for that. That is, you want this to kind of dry rigid, so when you scrape it off, it flakes away without peeling and tearing against it. It sort of has a uniformity about it. So make sure that you've pretty much covered, you know, even though it's not going to be touching necessarily those areas, you want it to dry and be sort of a rigid piece. It actually becomes a little bit brittle that way, and so when you rasp it off, it flakes away without a lot of resistance or we're grabbing on, and make sure your ends back here are in pretty good shape, where they wind up at, because especially back here, because you don't want any kind of a lift back there. And this, up off of this riser, is actually a pretty sensitive spot. Okay, that looks pretty good. Now we'll let that just set up. And Type Bond 3 is great because it gives you some working time, and you got to have that working time. Make sure it's dust free, spot free, just pristine as you can get it. This cloth absorbs some of it at first, so you have to, even though it has already some inside of the cloth. And believe me, when I'm putting this cloth on, I'm pressing it in, and I'm trying to get as much glue inside that cloth as possible to create that full skin. So it kind of gives this would be a lot thirstier if I hadn't already filled it with a lot of glue from down beneath. So it already has a substrate or skin on it right now, and that's what you're trying to do, is make sure that it has a nice smooth skin, a pre-base you can rely on. Nice even bed all the way down. You get a little bit of squeeze out, you get a little bit of shifting. There's lots of little reasons for some of the procedure as well when it comes down to the final finishing and ornamentation of this and keeping it all together. Look for any beans that happen in there. You don't want those little suckers. That can be from the cloth rolling up. I think we're pretty much there. Looks pretty good. Actually, we want a little more standing up in some areas. You want it to be where it's kind of standing up, where you know you filled that cloth. But you don't want to over-exercise the cloth too, so that's why I use this kind of a brush, is it doesn't drag back and forth and raise any little things up on there. Now this is about right. You want it to have that kind of a standing up look, so it's well puddled. Okay. This is the advantage of using the Type Bond 3, is it's so much more workable. It gives you a good working time to deal with it. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to lay this down. I'm going to get just on the very back edge of that, and I'm going to support it. And we can shift this. We're going to get it down in place. We're going to kind of stretch it to center, kind of feel it, stretch it down. You're going to find the grain of the snake skin where it lays down, and you're going to work that way. Don't go against the scales. It doesn't fare very well doing that. Kind of look down your bow, see if it is, if the diamondback pattern is where it needs to be. It'll wander sometimes, like it did here, trail off. For one thing, this bow limb is not 100% perfect. It's not. I mean, it has its own direction. It's going a little bit. I mean, it's close. This is a natural product bow limb, subject to little things that, and you don't want to do stuff which would cause this to have double contact to itself, like the duct tape effect. This skin will just lift right off. You want to make sure this has completely free and clear of all resistance items, things. Take your time and smooth this shoulder out. Sometimes I'll have to come back here and I'll see that little extra there. I'll get in here with the scissors and I'll snip that off because I don't want that causing any issues along that edge there. Where it's laying down. See, that's a little better there like that. Keep working it. Let your hands go along the edges there. When this is dry, we'll do the obvious. We'll take the rasp and knife and cut in along the arrow rest there. On some of my bows, I've started to put arrow rests in because I noticed that there's a market for arrow rests, because for some people, shooting off the glove is a little more traditional than they want to go. So I respect that, so I've incorporated arrow rests frequently. I just don't like to do it in a U-bow. I've done it a few times, and there's just, you know, the sapwood, I mean, it does work. I've been through some trials with it. I don't know what I'm talking about that right now. Anyway, you keep working this skin. Keep doing it several times so you can feel, you're going to feel little bubbles like the glue kind of rolling underneath there. You don't want those to be standing up anywhere. Alright, now I prefer to work from one side, and since we're watching this on camera, it makes it a little easier for you to see that. So I'm going to flip this thing around. I'm going to go ahead and do this other limb. You've already seen how I do it. It's not necessary for you to watch both limbs because we're going to do this. We're just going to do the same thing here again. So anyhow, I'm going to go ahead and get this prepared, laid down, and we're going to let it cure for probably a good 12 to 24 hours, and then we'll go into the next stages of it. I've got 2 of these to do, so we'll talk to you soon. Okay, we have both the bows out here that I covered the backs in Diamondback Rattlesnake skin. Followed the procedures that you've seen in any of the videos I've done, and the previous one to this. So anyhow, these are going to set out here, well, maybe not so much out here, but in this kind of a position for probably anywhere from 10 to 12 hours or more, so that they, you know, will cure up real well and be stable. And becomes then the following next step will be the very careful process of removing the extra flapping skin there. I like how the tails turned out there near the tips. The other ones didn't quite have the length of tails, so I wasn't able to use them. They were kind of cut off. So when I have the chance, I like to use just where the snake rattle is. But this is still a beautiful bow here, the way it turned out. Anyhow, we'll be back on the next steps of finishing these things, giving them working the rasp, cleaning them off, and the final steps are preparing these skins to look really nice and pristine. So we'll talk to you guys soon.